Now, I think the context of all politics is that we look after people who need us, and with that issue in mind, um, we need an opposition that can tackle that and speak up for people who need support. That's what the Labour Party was formed for, and that's what most of us who are here joined the Labour Party for. If you are not a Labour member anymore, I don't mean you are. I just mean I think the Labour Party is supposed to support those in need. So when I criticise sometimes on this programme the Labour Party, it's because we need a good opposition. Not criticising it is not going to make it any better. Just want to make that clear, because I've been having some emails from people saying, why do you keep saying negative things about Labour? You know, it's the Tories. But we know the Tories are Tories. We want a good opposition to the Tories. And the next part of this, the show, is a discussion about Labour's failings with data protection that could actually lead the party to be in massive financial problems, and also lose all integrity with members. So I'd like to start this this section. I know it might get quite technical about data protection. I'm trying to avoid that. I want to make it simple as possible. But there has been a claim about the data breach that happened in November, and lots of people have joined this claim from a law firm called Angelus, which have sent out an email to people saying that they've had an update from the Labour Party, but the update is that they've failed to provide the requested documents to a subject access request, and that goes against legal requirements. Now, it's all a bit confusing, as I say, but we have on the show here Toby Taylor, who is the ex-head of technology for Vice Media and a compliance data and security consultant. Toby is a source of knowledge for international companies who want to keep their data safe. Toby, how bad is Labour's data protection? How bad is it?
Compliance,
Yeah.
actually, it's really, really dire. I apologise for any background noise, by the way. I'm outside. Yeah,
I like your shirt as well, by the way. Carry on.
I thought you might. No, it's dire. It's an incredibly alarming situation for I guess, you know, the way that Starmer's Labour was presented to us, people of my age, were that they were the professionals, the grown-ups, the forensic, all that stuff. The beige managerial stuff that they elude and pretend to be good at, they're awful at. This is the thing that they said they'd be good at, is following the rules, following the law, and they've just absolutely succinctly failed in doing that.
Yeah,
it's hugely embarrassing.
So what is it that you get? The subject access request. What is the normal procedure with that, and when should companies reply to it?
So I mean, I'll give a tiny. I don't want this to get too technical. You've said exactly the right thing. The Data Protection Act 2018 was enacted in the UK. It's our variant of GDPR. We have to comply to it. You are responsible to make. You have various responsibilities for people's data, which is things like lawfulness, fairness, transparency, accuracy, storage limitations. So that means, and this is something that's quite interesting for a lot of people who have had emails from the party saying your data has been leaked, but they've left. That there is no reason that the data should be retained, that the Labour Party should be retaining information about people that have left, because they've essentially, they don't need to. That breaches any data compliance or whatever happens. But when someone makes a subject access request and they say, hey, I want to know what data you retain about me. Now that isn't going to be things like emails and stuff like that. If someone's mentioned your name in an email, you're not going to get that. But they should maintain a system where they know what data they retain about an individual. You should get that in 2 to 3 days. That's normally the time frame I'd expect as a compliance officer. I'd expect that.
Right.
You can get up to a month. That's the legal limit, and then they can apply for an additional month if it's a very complex request. That has to go via the ICO, though. They can't just magically decide that they're going to get 2 months. Now, if you're like me, I made my subject access request in November last year when I heard about the breach, because I'll be honest, I actually want, this wasn't me being petty. I just wanted to know. I work in data. I haven't heard a peep. After several requests, I've heard nothing. And I think that this is the experience that many people have had, where Labour just haven't responded to them. And that's just completely, that is completely illegal.
So from November to April, you've kept asking and you haven't heard anything.
Absolutely not a peep.
Right.
This is the
so can I just come in? Because the thing is, what alerted me to you was a tweet that you put out where you showed that there was a job application going, which I'm just going to put on the screen now. Here we go. Job ad for data protection officer, date added 21st of April, closing date 26th of April. Do you think they actually have a data protection officer in place now dedicated to this, or are they actually advertising for one?
I'm sure they don't. I'm sure they don't have someone dedicated to it. They will have needed to have one because of, not every company needs to have a data protection officer, but any company that deals with what's called special category data. So this is things like racial, ethnic origin, political opinions. There you go. Trade union membership. There you go. They are two definite reasons why they must have a data protection officer. That person, whoever they are, they haven't been doing their job because no one's heard a peep from them. So now there's a 5-day job ad. That's they've probably got someone in mind for it. Let's be realistically, this is what companies do. This is window dressing. They're just going, oh yeah, well, we've got someone in mind. We've got to post the job to be fair and whatever. But this is this is far too late in the process for them to decide.
5 months after they were alerted of a data breach, they've advertised for someone to deal with their whole data protection scheme or management, I suppose is the word. What does that say about the? Can I just get to the point here? So do you not mind?
Absolutely.
What does that say about the General Secretary of the Labour Party if it's taken 5 months to actually address the problem?
Well, for me, it would say that his priorities are completely skewed. The priority has been something else, factional warfare, whatever it is that David Evans decides to spend his time with, probably pissing around in Croydon. But it isn't right. This is not the thing that they've cared about. They've not cared about this until the ICO. And I think there's actually 3 law firms. There's the one you mentioned. There's Keller Lenker, and there's also Chris. Hayes Connor. There's these 3 massive not class action. We don't have class actions in the UK. General litigation orders. There are 3 big law firms knocking on the door of them saying, you've got to do something. The ICO have now said you've got to respond. And so what Labour have done, instead of actually responding, they've tried to just get some sap in to do the job. They should have done this 5 months ago. In actual fact, they should have done this. This should have been a position in that party as an open role forever. The amount of membership that they have, this should have been something that they should have been on top of for day one, and it's appalling, actually, from not just from a compliance perspective, but just generally. It is aberrant and quite upsetting.
And do you think if it were any other company, do you think David Evans would have been shown the door by now?
If I'd have been underemployed at a firm and this had happened to me, I'd have been shown the door very rapidly. Right. And actually, I'd also be personally likely culpable. I would be in trouble myself. The data protection, unfortunately, there's no indemnity that you can get with limited liability. You are personally responsible. So if there is a chance that Mr. Evans is named as the data protection officer, which is quite likely, he's personally responsible for this.
So he could lose all his money.
He could lose a hell of a lot, and so could the Labour Party. That's the issue here, right? No, they're out there with their hat waiting, begging for money. No one is going to give them money to pay fines. That you don't do that. You pay money for marketing, for PR, for all that stuff. No one's going to give them money to pay off fines, the ICO, or worse, these massive legal lawsuits. It's incredibly damaging.
Yeah. Well, look, thank you for keeping it simple, and good to hear the parakeets. Good to hear the parakeets. You know, Jimi Hendrix got those, released one of those, and it started it all off. You know that, don't you?
Apparently so. There's also Beckenham Place. I'm in Catford, by the way. This is sunny Catford in southeast London, but yeah, apparently that the parakeets came from Beckenham Place Park.
Oh, okay, as well as that, like Jimi Hendrix and the Beckenham Place Park. Oh, it was an interesting combination. Thank you, Toby.